So I might get a little theoretical or philosophical or abstract, maybe is the right word in this one. But I've been having a debate with myself as well as some other people the last couple of days around the topic, which is I read something about Socrates where he supposedly spoke about this kind of seeming paradox of where people have a choice between two things and they know one is better for them, but they pick the other thing. And apparently, what Socrates says about that is something that I believe, which is that it's all a calculation ultimately, and there's some either error in calculating that's resulting in them picking the other thing, or there's some hidden benefit or whatever it might be that leads them to that thing. So it's never really illogical, I guess is the point. If you're choosing between eating, broccoli or a candy bar, in theory, you might know that broccoli is better for you. So somebody might say, well, if you pick the candy bar, then you're acting illogically. Well, I would disagree, and I think Socrates would support this. Sure, it's true that broccoli is quote unquote better for you, more healthy for you, but in that moment, maybe you haven't had a candy bar in a while. Maybe you just desperately want a candy bar that's more important to you. There's some value in that candy bar that's greater than the health value of the broccoli, right? The thing you're trying to optimize for, the objective you have, isn't to eat healthy in that moment. The objective is to fulfill some needs you have or whatever it is, right? So there's reasons, logical reasons, why you pick the candy bar in that scenario. So that led to, some back and forth on if that's true, or is there ever a scenario where you truly do something illogical, where you truly pick something that doesn't make any sense, that you actually don't want? And I don't believe that's the case. And it starts to send you down a path to where it started making me wonder, like, what is an excuse? Right, definition wise, we kind of know what an excuse is, right? I looked it up. It's recently, just to make sure I had the exact. It's a reason or explanation to justify a fault or an offense. So it's a reason, an explanation that justifies a fault, something that you did wrong. In more common terms, I think we would say, if we were trying to lose weight and we're not successful at it, we would make an excuse. Well, work's been really busy, or it's just been so hot outside, I can't, exercise or go out for a run, or it's too expensive to eat healthy, whatever, right? We make excuses. And if you think of it in the terms of the definition, it's an explanation or a reason to justify the fault here being you're not doing the thing you said you did. I wonder if you kind of bang that up against the Socrates theory, does that actually reconcile? Does that fit together logically? Because in theory, an excuse is saying, hey, I did something wrong, so let me explain to you why I did the wrong thing. Or, the way some people might think about it is, I'm removing my blame from it. It's not my fault that I did this wrong thing. There's an excuse there. There's a reason there. So you think of that in terms of Socrates' view, where it's all a calculation. And I would say it's all math, it's all cost-benefit analysis. You could see an argument where you'd say, there's really no excuses, there's really no justifications. You did the thing you wanted to do. You had a decision, you had free will, and you chose to do this thing. Now, sometimes it's hard, obviously, right? So you can almost get in a little bit of like a motivational speaker view here, but it might be hard to do the thing, but you had a choice in the matter, right? Quit smoking. Super hard to do. There's a physical addiction to it, but it can be done. People struggle with it though, understandably. So if somebody plans to quit smoking and they don't succeed, how hard should they be on themselves? How harsh should they judge themselves? Should they make excuses? Again, maybe work's been super busy, or somebody in the family's been sick and you're stressed. So to dedicate the mental energy to quitting smoking right now, you just can't do it. It's not the time for you. So again, where does that leave you? Is that Is that an excuse? Is it actually a mistake that you made? Is there a fault there? Did something go wrong, I guess is another way to put it. You didn't quit smoking. In theory, that feels like something went wrong. But did it really go wrong? Did you really want to quit smoking? It almost gets to this like honest conversation with yourself, right? The distinction between what you aspire to want or what you want to want versus what you actually want. So it seems as if something went wrong because the aspiration you had, the thing that you wanted to be true, you didn't live up to. But at its core is the reality that you didn't actually want that thing. You wanted the thing you did because you would never do something illogical. You would never pick to keep smoking if you genuinely wanted to quit. If you truly wanted to quit, you would quit. So there's no mistakes that happen, right? There might be mistakes in your calculation. You might not have thought about it enough, right? I'll give you an example in the quit smoking. You might say, perhaps you say, I don't believe it's as dangerous as people say. Or perhaps you say, I'm still relatively young, so I have time to quit. Like if I quit within the next 2 years, I think I'll be fine. Like there won't be any long lasting damage. You might be wrong about that, right? Your assessment of that might be off. You might be justifying something in your head incorrectly, however you want to think about it. But from a logical perspective for yourself, you had a reason and you followed through on that reason, right? Again, it may not align with your aspiration, but you did the logical thing that you thought made sense. So again, back to this idea of what's an excuse really? Is an excuse really just the thing we tell ourselves to, I guess, ultimately lie to ourselves, right? Rather than admit, I didn't actually want to do that, you make an excuse. And as I say that, I recognize somebody might say, well, yeah, that's exactly what an excuse is. But I think it's normally interpreted a little bit differently. It's normally, let me explain why I failed at doing the thing I intended to do. Now let me explain why I failed at living up to the expectation that I wanted to do. But again, I think it's slight, and that's where I said it's kind of abstract, but I don't think that's what an excuse actually is. I think an excuse is just a way to cover up the fact that you did the thing you actually wanted to do, and you don't want to admit that, right? So you could pick any vice here, really. It could be anything. You could cheat on a spouse. You could, not quit smoking. You could not lose weight. You could pick the candy bar over the broccoli. Whatever it is, there's this superficial view of what we think we should be doing. And because oftentimes we don't want to have the honest conversation with ourselves, we don't want to really get into the mud in our own minds and say, hey, what do I really want here? Truly, what do I want? Let me really put all of the information out on the table and run the true calculation and see what I truly want, right? I'll give a perfect example for myself. I say regularly that I do not love my job, right? Constantly I'll say that, and that if the opportunity presented itself, I would rather do something else that I'm more passionate about, that I feel more fulfillment from. It's not my life's work, all that type of stuff. So I tell myself that I know that this isn't the job that I want. Yet I still work at this job. I've worked here for 7 or 8 years now. So somebody would look at that and say, well, that's illogical, right? That makes no sense. Well, my argument would be, going back to the kind of Socrates point, well, no, it does, right? There's other parts of it that I'm just not being honest with myself about. Whether it be that I'm too lazy to go find a different job, whether it be that I'm too scared to take the chance to do something different. There's something in there in the equation that makes the math work for me to still be at this job. I just don't want to admit that, right? So I could give excuses, right? I can give excuses around COVID going on. I can give excuses about I have a young child or my wife has some health issues. All these excuses in which normally people would interpret as like, oh, you're explaining why you can't do the thing you want to do. Again, I don't think that's true. I think those excuses allow me to cover up the fact that I'm doing the thing I truly want to do, right? Which seems strange, right? Because I'm telling you I don't love this job. But again, it could be true that I don't love this job, but I don't love the fear of quitting it or the hassle, right? The work it would take to quit it. I dislike that more. So you run the math and it still checks out. So again, a little bit abstract here, but I think that the net takeaway is this idea of an excuse. What is an excuse really? And I'll say it again, probably as much for myself as for anybody listening, but what I'm starting to believe is that an excuse is not a justification for why you did something wrong, right? The true definition is an excuse is an explanation or a justification to a fault or an offense. And you could put in there, I would argue, something you did wrong. I think an excuse is really a way to cover up the fact that you're doing the thing you actually intended to do, but you don't want to admit that. And it comes back to this idea that every action we take, every decision we make is deliberate, right? Short of a mental illness, of a true mental illness where we just totally don't think rationally, any action, any decision is based on a deliberate calculation that we do that says, I'm going to do that thing. And the true challenge in life is to be willing to, as I would say, get in the mud and understand that math truthfully. Understand what it is you really want. And that's not to say it can't change. Like in my example with the job, if I get into the mud there and I start really thinking about it, I might start to clarify how I'm weighting some of the numbers in this metaphorical calculation I'm doing and recognize, hey, yeah, I am lazy and it will take work to do it. But if I really think about it, it's worth it and I want it. And then I'll do it because then it'll be true. If I don't still, well, then I'm still lying to myself. Then I'm still telling myself a story that I want to be true, that I'm not that lazy, or that I want to be fulfilled and have a more meaningful job so badly. But if I don't take that action, then it's just, in my view, it's just simply not true. The truth is, I want to stay at my job. The truth is, any excuse I make is just covering up that fact that I don't want to admit it, that ultimately the math checked out and I want to stay at my job. And that's what I think an excuse ultimately comes down to.